Lucy. It's your boy TWP Popcorn. Y'all know what time it is. 6 p.m. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. Regular post, look out for shorts. Y'all know to hit up that buy me a coffee link, sign up, get your content monetized. Check out Yokin and Dubby if y'all need y'all some affiliate programs. They are taking applications and accepting people to start selling. It's marketing, so get your sales up. But if y'all want one of them stamps, make sure y'all hit up that link for Riley Print. Shouts out to Riley Print. They got them stamps for you. Y'all go ahead and let me know what y'all smoking on. Let's get ready to start this show.
Okay, my friends, here it is, the video that is going to explain to you everything you need to know in order to successfully grow, harvest, and produce the foundational natural pesticide of the JDOM system, and that is the Jerusalem artichoke natural pesticide. So I'm going to say some things about it, and then I'm going to take you in the field and show you how it's done. The Jerusalem artichoke is one of the three main natural pesticide plants in the JDOM system. There's the Jerusalem artichoke, the ginkgo tree, and the Korean passiflower. Those are the ones that are really tried and true by the JDOM system over a number of years. And so those are the foundation of the system. Other plants can work, yes, but these ones work the best. And this is my experience as well. But the thing is that we don't grow Korean passiflower in Zone 5, Northern Indiana. We barely can grow the ginkgo tree. Some people do, but that's kind of a slow growing, that's a long-term thing. But the Jerusalem artichoke, also known as the sunchoke, I believe, is cold hardy down to Zone 3, so you have nothing to worry about. So it's a very hardy plant. Once you plant it, that's pretty much it. You will have it forever. It can be, people can call it invasive, but you just have to keep that in mind. So the way that it grows, and I will show you, but the way that it grows is that you put the tuber into the ground. It's a tuber like a sweet potato in a way. And you put the tuber in the ground, and then it will shoot up. It will put up shoots that have flowers. They look like a small sunflower. And then it will put little runner roots, and then another tuber bulb, and then little runner roots, and another tuber bulb like that. And they will stay in the ground, so that even if you think you get all of them, you won't get all of them, and there will still be some coming up the following year. But this is good for us because we want to use it as the natural pesticide. And so, like pretty much everything in the JDOM system, it is for multiple things at once. It's not just for one little pest that you use this. You use this as a general preventative and a pest repellent, a general insecticide. So what I do is, well, many years ago now, I bought the bulbs, I think from Amazon or someplace like that. I'll put a link in the description to where you can buy the exact ones. But you only buy them once because you plant them and then they just keep coming back. So then I make it in the fall time for the following year. That's how I usually do it. Although you can make it in the same year as well if you wanted to. But it's best the first year to let them grow all the way. Although you can make some mid to late summer. But then you also have food if you like them. I don't particularly like the Jerusalem artichoke because it's full of like inulin, I believe is the term for it. So it's like a non-digestible carbohydrate in some way. I'm not that wild about it, but you might be. So it is food, definitely, if you know how to prepare it right. But I'm telling you this now, guys, so that you can get the stuff ordered and you can think about where you're going to plant it. And then come mid to late summer, you will be harvesting the ideal pesticide. So let us get into it, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you the specifics. Okay, first thing we got to do is grow the Jerusalem artichoke. Now, they will come like this in the mail as tubers, and they grow underground, and they spread by these little thin root-like structures, and then they produce more tubers. So they will proliferate big time. And it really does not matter what kind of soil you plant these in. They will grow in just poor clay. They are very, very vigorous. You don't need to do anything special. And then they grow into this nice, tall, 7, 8, 9 foot tall sunflower looking thing. They attract pollinators, and they're really a wonderful plant to utilize. So then we're just going to cut up the plant into manageable chunks. You only need to make it so that you can get the whole plant into the stock pot. I am using my favorite tool ever, and that is the Skull Crusher from Tops Knives. Maybe I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to get one your own. I'm not affiliated. I'm just saying it is so useful and indestructible. But just chop it up all like this. It doesn't have to be super fine, just anything you have to do to get it into the pot. And then knock off as much of the soil as you can from the roots. And then we're going to use the roots, we're going to use the tubers, we're going to use all of it. And for me, I like to crush the tuber, although it's not totally necessary. I've always done it, where I just give the tuber a crush with the flat side of the knife, put it all into the pot, and then fill it with hot water, just enough to cover all the plant material, no more, no less. And then we will put it onto the stove on high heat. Go ahead and blast it with the heat until it gets up to the rolling boil like this. We want to bring it up to the rolling boil and let it boil like this for about 10-15 minutes before putting the lid on and then turning it down to low. Okay, so here we've been letting it boil on low for about 4 hours, and it's pretty much ready because everything has been withered and it is nice and dark and rich. So every so often we've been stirring it, but this is about 4 hours. You could let it go anywhere between 4 and 5 hours until the tubers are total mush like this. Now it is ready to be processed. And so to do that, we are going to put it into our half-gallon mason jars, and we're going to can it like anything else. So get your supplies ready, and then we're going to put it through a double strainer like this. And we want to make sure that we leave the pot boiling so that we're actually pouring it into there as it's boiling. And then we put the lid on, hand tight, put them in the hot water bath method, and we're going to boil it like this for about 30 minutes on a very, very mild boil, just like this. And 30 minutes is enough. And when we do it this way, we are going to successfully sterilize it enough where it can sit shelf stable all winter long, for a full year, really. And then you will be able to use it at your leisure. Okay, so at this point you have grown the Jerusalem artichoke, you have harvested it, and you've boiled it down, and you have the pesticide. Now it is either late summer of the same year that you planted, or it's the following year, and you're going to use it now. Now, you're going to use it at a rate of anywhere from 1 ounce per gallon all the way to 1 cup per gallon. And if you're using a fog machine, like I'll show you in future videos, then you can use up to 3 cups per gallon in the fog machine. And you don't have to really worry about concentration problems, about using too much for these kind of things. It's not going to burn or hurt the plant. You just want to make sure that you apply it only in the evening time or the very early morning before the sun gets on it. Generally you never apply anything to the leaves, even water, when the sun is blazing. Okay, so when would we use this stuff? We will use it if we notice any kind of pest infestation, cabbage worms, aphids, all that kind of stuff. It's good for all of it, but we always combine it with the wetting agent. Listen, I'm gonna say it again. The effectiveness of this is imperatively dependent upon the wetting agent. So you want to always use the wetting agent with this stuff. So let us say that I want to do a preventative spray where I'm going to do it maybe once a week. It depends on your certain circumstance. So I will use 1 ounce a gallon of the wetting agent, and I will use 1 or 2 ounces a gallon of the Jerusalem artichoke liquid. Okay, and we will apply that in the evening. But if we have an infestation, then we must bring out the heavy artillery. We can do 3 ounces a gallon of the wetting agent and 1 cup a gallon of the Jerusalem artichoke liquid. And then we're going to spray maybe 3 nights in a row to really get the problem under control. Okay, so that's pretty much it, my friends. If you feel like you gained something from the video, give it a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment. First thing that comes to mind helps the channel grow. Also, share the video to all your Facebook groups and stuff like that, because we need more people to understand this knowledge, my friends. Also, check out the links in the description. If you want to make a donation to the PayPal account, there's a link there. Also, if you want, there's all kinds of good stuff in the description, links to good stuff. So check it out. And I will direct you to this video here. If you have not already made the wetting agent, watch this video a number of times and then make it yourself, my friends, because the season is coming.
Why? I'll tell you why. Because your brother is the embodiment of the can-do, roll-up-your-sleeve spirit that made this country great. He never gets discouraged, he goes after what he wants, and he doesn't know the meaning of the word quit. And if the day should come when any man, no matter how humble, can't go out there and soil the loins of some hot little dancer, well, I don't want to live in that America.
Companion planting or interplanting is a powerful gardening technique that I think confuses a lot of first-time gardeners, but if you think about it, it's really been practiced probably since the dawn of agriculture itself. Think about something like beans and corn. Pole beans are needing something to climb up. Corn provides that stalk and also sort of protects those beans. Then you add something like squash to ground cover and sort of shade that entire system, and voila, you have the Three Sisters method of planting that indigenous Americans came up with so many years ago. But while some combinations are intuitive like that, or maybe something like tomatoes with flowers so that bees come by and help pollinate the tomatoes, there are some really science-based companion planting ideas that are somewhat counterintuitive, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. So I stand here under my rose arch. It's tempting to the eye to think, wow, this plant's just kind of blowing around in the wind. It's not doing anything, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Not only is it actively growing at all times, but it is actively trying to protect itself from would-be predators. Take roses, for example. If you zoom in, you'll see there's some thorns on my Cecile Brunner climbing rose. That's going to dissuade pests from chomping down on those canes. It's going to dissuade little rodents from maybe building a nest or a bird from building a nest. And honestly, even myself, I'm going to have to strap on some pretty heavy-duty gloves if I want to prune that rose and be safe. But it is not only visible mechanisms that plants use to protect themselves from pests or predators. Believe it or not, some plants can actually inhibit weeds on their own. They don't need you to come in and spray. Cucumbers is actually a great example of that, to the point where a good combination is taking cucumbers and putting them in between your tomatoes in your summer tomato garden. It's kind of funky, but they actually produce allelochemicals, which inhibit weeds and other seedlings. And notice I say other seedlings, which means other edible stuff that you might want to grow might not be a fantastic idea to plant right next to a cucumber, not only for the inhibition effect, but also because they're going to produce all of these leaves that are going to block light that will also inhibit weeds. So you can think about these combinations that are a little counterintuitive, but produce an interesting result. When looking at planting for weed control and these interesting companion planting ideas, looking at farmers is often a good indication, especially if they're organic farmers, because they make their living doing this, so they better be doing a good job. And speaking of, you get into this crop called winter rye. Winter rye has 16 chemicals that are known to inhibit seed germination, but only at that stage. You can actually put in a large tomato and it's going to be completely fine. So a lot of farmers, they'll put winter rye in the winter, let it grow, and then chop it on down, and it inhibits most of the common weeds that they're going to experience, something like foxtail or purslane. So it's something that you could think about sprinkling in your rows. Next up, trap crops. And the name is very self-explanatory in this case. I'm actually standing above one right now, one of my favorites, which would be nasturtium. They can sometimes suck up the attention of unwanted pests that might attack your brassicas, like an aphid or something like that. But another interesting idea is if you suffer from flea beetles, which might be hitting your tomatoes in the summer, you can plant radishes or pak choi near them. Flea beetles tend to like those a little bit more, and they will sort of attack those and leave the plant you actually want to grow a little bit more intact. So it's a little counterintuitive. You're planting something edible that you want less around the thing that you want more, that the pest also wants more. So flea beetles, pak choi, and radish is a good combination. Another one is taking tomatoes and putting cowpeas next to them if you're dealing with something like a stink bug. If you see stink bugs all up in your tomatoes, throw some cowpeas down. They like cowpeas way more. They'll go on over to the cowpeas, and then you can actually pick up and collect the stink bugs and extinguish them so that they don't reproduce. So another example of a weirdly counterintuitive combo that serves the purpose of preventing a pest. My favorite example of this trap crop idea is actually a positive one, and it's taking alyssum, sweet alyssum, and planting it next to things like tomatoes. Why? Not because a pest is attracted, to the alyssum. It's actually because the pest of a pest is attracted to the alyssum. A braconid wasp really loves to be on and around that alyssum, but what it will do is it will find tomato hornworms nearby and lay its eggs in the back of the tomato hornworm. A little gruesome, a little freaky, a little raw nature there, but it is true. And you'll see these little white little balls kind of hanging out on the back of a tomato hornworm. That's actually the eggs of the wasp, which will kill the hornworm for you. And then the larva of those eggs can destroy aphids, which of course can also impact your tomatoes. So not only does it beautify that combination, it's a very pretty plant, very beautiful, but it has this crazy benefit of automatic pest prevention. Some crops, like this beautiful brassica right here, and even more specifically within the brassica family, mustards have what's called a biofumigant property to them. There's a compound called isothiocyanate within this family of crops specifically that not only gives it that bitter taste that we either know and love or know and tolerate, depending on your particular tastes, but it also helps control fungal diseases or soil-borne diseases like verticillium wilt or fusarium. So if you plant this or companion plant this with a particular plant that might suffer from it, it can help. But this is also why you see specific types of brassicas thrown into like a cover crop mix that you'll throw onto a bed at the end of a season and just let it chop and drop. It's because when tilled back into the soil, it's really effective at controlling those soil-borne diseases. Some companion planting combos actually improve the quality of your soil, either the nutrient density of it or the texture of it. And we're looking at one of the most famous ones right here, peas and beans legumes. What they'll do is they'll fix nitrogen. Basically, they'll take atmospheric nitrogen in the air and affix it to themselves. And then eventually when they die, it's broken down into the soil. So it's not as simple as just, hey, you planted some peas, magically there's more nitrogen in your soil. So let's talk about a couple combinations that really work. So how do you use nitrogen fixers correctly in the garden? You've got things like bush beans, cowpeas, and our personal favorite would be fava beans. Here's how to do it. What happens in the actual plant is that the nitrogen is fixed to these nodules that are around the root zone. So while the plant's growing, yeah, you could plant beans and I don't know, tomatoes at the same time, and there will be some level of additional nitrogen, but it really isn't a ton. It's actually better to grow those plants ahead of the crop that you're going to put in next. So beans or fava beans, especially since they like to grow during those colder months, when you cut them down, you don't rip the roots out. You just can't do that because of course all the nitrogen is in the nodules, which is in the roots. You can cut them down to the ground, don't rip the roots out, leave them in and then plant into that area, and then you'll actually get some of that nitrogen fixation benefit. So if you're looking for a very clear companion planting idea, you can take corn and fava beans. Plant fava beans maybe there, and there on the outside edges and on the interior, and then you could take corn after the fava have really started to grow, maybe gotten close to the end of their life, and sow it down the middle like that so they get to benefit from the fixation that's taken place. A lot of gardeners struggle to get good pollination, maybe on their cucumbers or their squash. And this is where thinking of the garden not just as a place to grow your groceries is really key. I'll be honest, when I first started gardening, I was like, if I can't eat it, why the hell would I grow it? It makes no sense. But in fact, it's completely the opposite. You need to be planting flowers of all different shapes, heights, sizes, colors, as long as they're not invasive or harmful in your region, in your garden. And you can plant them in all different ways. For example, in this bed, this is sort of a mixed bed. It's not exactly set up for spring quite yet, but I've got some zinnias. I have some other stuff hanging out in the midst of some of my winter stuff that's finishing up. Now, when I put in some summer stuff, well, this is going to do really well in attracting some beneficials, some bees, some butterflies, some moths, all that kind of stuff. It is not just about improving pollination, it's also improving the beautification of your garden, which is something that, quite frankly, I'm still working on. So things like this, planting on the edge of a bed and allowing it to spill and trail over. This is just starting its journey, but certainly is well on its way. Making a statement piece in the middle and then planting some things that might benefit from the beneficials that are around it on the perimeter might make a lot of sense. Now, to be honest with you, this is an entire video, maybe many videos of flower and vegetable combinations that work really well. But even something as simple, guys, as taking a tomato and putting basil next to it, you get a little bit of a companion benefit there, not only for, you know, the garden, but also for the kitchen, of course. And so you might be companion planting without even knowing it. There's much more to talk about here. If you're really looking for some interesting pollinators, I encourage you to check out Botanical Interests, which is our seed company. We have all sorts of different packs, regional, specific, very targeted ones. So take a look at that. Until next time, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.